Hello and welcome to Young and Sober, the podcast where we discuss what it means to get sober under the age of 30 and stay sober. If you're sober, sober curious, or just curious, you've come to the right place. Any discussions heard here are personal to the individual and should not be taken as the stance of AA as a whole.
And welcome to episode 6. This week we'll be chatting to Robert, who's come along to talk about being young, sober, and relationships. So, Rob, first before we go to a question from one of our listeners, how are you doing today?
Hello, yeah, that's great. Yeah, lovely to be here. Feeling very enthusiastic. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thanks for
Good morning.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, enthusiastic. Life's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet.
Cool. Good. Well, right. So, Alex, I think you had a question from one of our listeners.
Yeah. So Ash asks, what is a sponsor? Do you want to kick us off, Rob?
So for me, a sponsor is an alcoholic that has gone through the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous as outlined in the Big Book, and as part of their ongoing sobriety and contentment, shows other people how they have recovered using that method. A way of, it says for me anyway, my disease is manifest in selfishness and self-centeredness. And so if I'm of service to other people like that, it helps me stay sober. And it helps me, more than that, it helps me stay kind of emotionally sober. It helps me stay happy in a good mental space and have peace of mind, which, for an alcoholic of my description, it's not easy to live a life on life terms without some spiritual framework or a spiritual structure in my life, I suppose.
Yeah. Couldn't have put it better myself. That was brilliant. I feel like you've pretty much summarized it. I heard someone say in a meeting the other day that a sponsor can point out a beautiful sunset to you, but they can't tell you what to see, which I thought was really brilliant. They can kind of show you that it's there, but it's up to you to do the work. And a sponsor for me as well is not someone who's going to chase me down and hound me, but as long as I take responsibility for actually doing the work and doing the steps and contacting them and keeping them appraised of like what's going on in my life. And I think especially in my first 2 years actually, and sometimes still today, like before I make a really big decision, a big life decision, or even if like recently it's been like when I've gone on a first date and I have to like talk about how I felt and talk about how it went, and if I'm freaking out because they haven't texted me back, like I talk it through to my sponsor and she helps me to just kind of get perspective and bring myself back to reality rather than going off on what my head does and what my head says. It's really good to share that with another alcoholic.
Yeah, I think for me, in my early days, what I had to accept was that my sponsor wasn't my mate.
Yeah.
Really, it's not that sort of relationship. My relationship with my sponsor is quite formal, actually. Quite straight down the line. He gave me the daily suggestions to do, part of which was checking in with him every day. And really, what I quite quickly realized is all he was really interested in was whether I was doing the suggestions. I wanted to have a chinwag about how my day was and stuff, and he just wasn't interested.
Yeah.
That relationship has evolved since having worked steps and being in the middle of the bed with it and sponsoring other people and stuff and I don't check in with him as often. But when I do check in with him now, I tell him stuff that's going on in my head, stuff which I like feel shame about or embarrassed about, or I seek counsel on life stuff now, really. Like we'll touch on what's going on in my recovery and he's interested in that obviously, but I'll also run stuff past him like you do, like big life decisions and stuff that's going on. Yeah.
And I mean, I found my sponsor, I was probably about 2 weeks sober, I think, and she was somebody who I met in my second meeting, and she just immediately just showed me a lot of love and a lot of compassion and an interest in supporting me in my early sobriety. And she also was somebody who had the sobriety that I wanted. So like I saw her life and I saw that she was able to do things that I couldn't even imagine doing. Like she had children and she had a husband and she had her own business and she was happy, you know. And a lot of people said to me in my first 2 weeks, like, ask someone who has the sobriety that you would like to kind of to end up with or to progress towards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really kind of what I saw in my sponsor was yeah, he had peace of mind. He had freedom from the obsession to drink, and he was just living a super productive, happy life. You know, he was very fit, athletic, went out and ran, and he, you know, he was a member of his community, and he was a stalwart in AA and doing service, and he was able to hold and maintain relationships. You know, that was a big one for me. I was a great one at starting relationships. You know, and I'd be able to hide the crazy for a little bit, and then it would all bubble out, and everyone would be like, "Good Lord, this is not what I signed up for," and it would end. Usually after about 3 months was my limit, you know. And what I saw in him was a guy who identified with being like that, you know, having these sort of traits, but had a solution that he could work that would help him not be like that anymore, you know, and not overthink stuff and not be too neurotic, and I still want, and he's still like that now, you know. You know, he's just retired early, and he's going to go off and run and dig vegetables, and I want his life. I want to be that. I want to do that. You know, he's a good guy, and it's really good. I've had him for 15 years, so he just kind of brings up stuff that I said, which was a load of rubbish 15 years ago, and reminds me of it. So it's really kind of good. He's got like a longitudinal study of Robert, and brings it up and says, you know, come on, man, you've been here before, you know this, you know.
Yeah, they remind you of how far you've come, don't they?
Yeah.
Amazing. So just to give a bit of context, Rob, can you just tell us a bit about what brought you to the Rooms, to AA, and how long you've been sober?
Yes. Okay. So I started drinking alcohol almost straight away alcoholically when I was about 13, probably. First, you know, got into white lining, Lambrini. It's embarrassing, but Lambrini. I mean, just special brew as well. You know, just it just started off as sort of kind of like typical teenage drinking, you know, on bits of like Waste Grand near, you know, on a Friday and Saturday night, you know, like something to do with your friends, almost like, you know, underage pub maybe, you know. And very quickly it started to take over my life, you know. And in the beginning it was kind of it was just the most beautiful thing. It was just wonderful. It just gave me this sense of ease and comfort and peace and kind of serenity and purpose. It was just the elixir for life. It really was. But unfortunately, and if it stayed like that, I'd probably still be drinking, but it didn't. It turned and turned on me, and just started to bring in massive amounts of depression, massive amounts of anxiety, massive amounts of mental health issues, to the point where in my early university years, I was 19, I was seeing doctors and psychiatrists and saying, you know, what's wrong with me? And obviously I was being a little bit like, you know, I wasn't telling the whole truth about how much I was drinking. I was taking other substances as well. Don't go into too much of that, but you know, and basically the doctor said to me, essentially, you are going to have a wet brain if you carry on like this. In other words, you're going to have a permanent alcoholic psychiatric disorder from this stuff. Why don't you try AA? And you know, you just think, oh goodness, you know, I had all this glamorous partying lined up. You know, I was going to go to Ibiza and Glastonbury and party on all these yachts and all this stuff. And what I'm actually doing is going to AA. Oh my God, my life's over. But actually, it turns out it was the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I'm now 19 years sober. Believe it or not. My sponsor said to me the other day, well, if you're gonna be an old timer in AA, i.e. someone's been around nearly 20 years, you better stop acting like a newcomer, which made me laugh. But yeah, I mean, so that's my story. Yeah.
Amazing. 19 years, my goodness.
Mm.
So today's topic is relationships. So we talked about dating and all of that kind of stuff last week, and we touched on a little bit on relationships. To be honest, it's been a part of what we've been talking about on and off since the beginning. But which relationships for you suffered the most during your drinking?
Well, I have to say, I was a classic alcoholic, so I withdrew from all forms of social interaction and society quite early. Actually, to be honest, I actually dropped out of school. I didn't go to school for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I was sort of having counselling, and it talks about being able to work AA in all your affairs. I didn't really have many affairs to work AA in. I didn't really have many relationships. Maybe, I think maybe my mum, and that's just because she was legally obliged to have me in her house and look after me because I was a child. And that was it. I pushed away all my fellow pupils, teachers, everyone. I was just a bit of a mess. So the idea of even having any sorts of relationships other than just sitting in my room, which is my kind of de facto position, the position where I always end up is just, I think it's going to bring me peace. And look, if I just can sit on my own and be by myself, it'll be great. It'll be fine. I'll figure it all out, and then I'll be happy. But it doesn't. That what AA has taught me is that's not the case. I crave connection. I crave relationships, and I crave really responsibility and a kind of sense of usefulness. And that's what AA has kind of given me, and shown me that I need to do. I suppose. I don't know if it's a bit long-winded. I don't know, but hopefully that's helped. Yeah.
Christian?
Yeah. Well, I know we obviously talked about romantic relationships last week, but definitely my relationships with girlfriends, because not only did I cheat on my girlfriends because of my drinking, and they would either find out through somebody else, or I would deny until I die that anything happened. So I'm just full of lying, full of just like deceit. Therefore, just my very being around me was just like, this guy's just like full of shit, and I can tell he's not being honest, but he hasn't got the balls to admit it. And also just like my general, like even when I wasn't drinking, but I was still drinking when I did drink, my behavior was I was a very reactive person. So like very, very sensitive. So any form of like what I deemed to be some sort of criticism against me, I would just explode at them. And, be just really rude and just really like abusive, really, verbally. One or two times things got a bit more physical, and again, it was all just because I felt so just like, it was more to do with the relationship I actually had with myself. I just hated myself, basically. So that would just project onto the people that I loved the most, the people that I was closest with. Certainly my family as well. There were times where, a few occasions where, there'd be like a family event, like going home for the weekend for a roast, mum's really looking forward to it. And I'm just on a come down, hungover, not able to contribute to the conversation, wanting to sleep. She's just thinking like, what is wrong with you? Work relationships, I think, I don't know how I managed to like not lose a job in my active addiction, which is kind of crazy, but certainly, my performance at work was definitely affected as a result of my drinking. So I guess in that respect, it was like they couldn't really rely on me. I was never like consistent. Like I was sort of like boom or bust at work, I'd either be smashing it or I'd just be just like useless, because my head is just like cotton wool and I can't focus or concentrate. All I want to do is eat McDonald's and go home,
Yeah.
So yeah, in a nutshell, I'd say those are the three which, and I look at like my amends that I did during the steps, and I did amends with some of my close friends, and to be honest, most of them, no one really said anything which was like, yeah, no, actually this was really bad and that was really bad. Most of them were like, hasn't affected them, or it's like water under the bridge. But yeah.
Yeah, mine are really similar. I mean, you know, you mentioned your relationship with myself and with yourself, sorry, and I had exactly the same thing where towards the end of my drinking, and to be honest, probably all of my drinking past the age of about 19 or 20, I just absolutely hated myself, and I would be so full of shame and guilt and embarrassment, and that, like, similar to you, would put me on the defensive, and I would be constantly trying to protect myself, and just berating myself. I mean, there was just so much negative self-talk and self-hatred. My family as well really, really suffered. I think my mum in particular was just in so much pain watching me just abuse myself and get myself into so many dangerous situations. I remember once, my last year of university, I went out on a night out with a friend of mine and ended up landing on my face with my hands in my pocket, and the whole left side of my face, I had a black eye, but it like covered the whole of my face, and I actually ended up fracturing my eyebrow bone. And I remember sending my mum a picture and thinking it was funny, and she cried. She was so upset that I had gotten myself into such a state that I'd allowed that to happen and that I didn't see a problem with it. And my sister, so my sister's 18 months younger than me, and she was always the person that fought my corner. She was the person that I would call after a night out when I was full of shame and full of guilt and full of embarrassment, and she would always comfort me. And it was really selfish, and I was very entitled in the sense that I would behave really badly, and then I would kind of expect other people to pick up the pieces and to make me feel better. And I only in sobriety have realized how unfair that was on her, and again how much pain she was in just watching me doing all this stuff to myself. And then work as well, you mentioned. Before I went over to South Africa, I was working in a pottery painting cafe, and week after week after week, I would be too hungover to go to work, and someone else would have to do my job for me. And I just didn't even think about their feelings or how it would affect them. All I would think about was the fact that I was hungover and I couldn't cope and I was too anxious. And I just didn't take their kind of well-being or feelings into consideration at all. And then lastly was my parents. You know, I mean, I talked about my mum, but when I moved back from South Africa, I actually got sober 2 weeks after being at home, because I eventually saw how much pain I put them through and how much pain I put my brother and sister through. And yeah, I mean, the beginning of getting sober, I was living with my parents for the first 2.5 years of my sobriety. So that for me was really difficult, because living with your parents as an adult isn't easy, even if you're not an alcoholic. But that really, really helped me to work a lot on my relationship with them. And lastly, the relationship, I had a boyfriend probably about 5 or 6 years before I got sober, and he was actually the first person to tell me to stop drinking, because he bore the brunt of it. So like after a night out, when I'd carried on drinking, he was the one that had to deal with the consequences, because I would just be totally out of my mind, blacked out, and couldn't remember anything. And the next morning he would always be like, Alex, do you know what happened to you after you blacked out? Like, you need to stop drinking. This is not healthy. Like, you can't drink on your antidepressants. And I just ended up breaking up with him, mostly for that reason, because he didn't let me do what I wanted to do. So yeah, just the assumption that everyone should just let me do what I wanted to do all the time and not tell me not to do it. I just didn't want to be told what to do at all.
Yeah. God, there's so much stuff there. Oh, sorry, go on, Rob.
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny, isn't it? I think every alcoholic's got a black eye story. I ran across a roundabout in my probably 14, 15 and fell over and had an argument with a bush and got a black eye. I thought that was funny, but then totally didn't think. Yeah, consider what my mum or dad would think about that. And one of the things I kind of learned in AA is what sorry means in the mouth of an active alcoholic, which is, please don't hold me accountable for what I've done. Can you forget about it as soon as possible? And can I have 20 quid? That's what sorry really means to me. And what AA's kind of taught me is people don't want to hear my sorries anymore. They want to hear difference. They want to hear change. They want to, you know, my dad wants me to turn up for stuff. He doesn't want me to be hungover or acting erratically or awkward. He wants me to turn up and be part of the family. And you know what? Listen to him sometimes. Give him some solace. Give him some counsel. Ask him how he's doing. You know, he's a human. He's got emotions. He's got things going on for him. You know, I mean, he's quite a sort of old fashioned dad. He doesn't, well, I never just spoke to my dad about this stuff, but I think he really likes the fact that he's got a son that will listen to him and open up and hear him and try and stay in touch with him a bit more than I was, because what I would do is I'd go missing for a month and then ring him up and say, can I have 100 quid or something? You know what I mean? Yeah. That's kind of what that was kind of, like that was my what, he's just a bank, isn't he? Do you know what I mean? The bank of dad. And with my mum, when she passed away, she said on her deathbed, she said, are you going to be okay? And she meant, are you going to be okay with this stuff? Because she'd seen me at my worst, you know what I mean? And I was able to say, yeah, I am. And also, I would have to say that I actually have got a career and started work. I didn't even want to work when I came to AA. I really didn't. I really, honestly, genuinely, my whole outlook was, I just want to drink and take other substances and play computer games in my pants, and that's literally my sole aim in life. And actually what AA has taught me is that's not a very fulfilling life. It's a bit of an existence, and it's not a way to live your life when you don't drink either, and actually, if I want self-esteem, I need to do esteemable acts, and being of service to others is the kind of rent I pay. I'm nicking that one. It's great though, it's what I need to do to have any sort of contentment, any emotional balance, any good mental health, is to be of service to others. And that includes at my job, even when I've got a domineering boss that doesn't understand that I'm special and different and shouldn't have to do my job, and how dare she, and it's like, no, you do need to turn up on time, turn up and do a job, mate, and stick at it. What makes you think that you can just chill out, like everyone else has got to work,
Yeah, and I totally relate to that not working.
What you were both saying there, Alex and Rob, about essentially what you were both suggesting is like you kind of thought that the special and different sort of, oh, you don't understand me, you don't understand my problems. And what AA kind of smashes out of you quite quickly is you're not special and different. If somebody, if you have a commitment at a group, it's like you show up on time and you fulfill the commitment. They know, in AA, it's like they sort of know what we're like. People that have been around for a while, they know what we're like inside out. Like, we don't like to commit to things. We don't want to take responsibility. Someone else will do it. I'm too important. And that got smashed out of me quite quickly.
People hold us accountable,
Yeah.
And I mean, we didn't allow people to hold us accountable before, because I personally was so full of kind of self-pity, and my life is so hard, and I'm depressed all the time, I'm anxious all the time, I deserve to be looked after, I deserve to be given extra grace, way more grace than anybody else. And I think that really reminds me of, my relationship with my dad, I think, is probably the one that's transformed the most in my recovery, because he'd kind of just shut me off emotionally, because I think for him, it was too painful. And I mean, we talk about a lot how the ones we love are the ones that suffer the most. Because I mean, I was not a particularly confrontational person with my friends or with people at work, because I was too scared of them not liking me, but I knew that my family weren't going to leave, and they weren't going to stop loving me, so I could just treat them as badly as I liked, and just expect them to deal with the consequences. And Rob, what you were saying about asking other people how they feel, when I first came into recovery, I had to remind myself to say, and how are you? Because automatically my favorite thing to do is to just talk about myself and stop, and ask for them to ask me another question about myself, and then answer questions about myself again. Learning to actually not just ask how are you, but to really listen. Like, I learned how to listen to other people, and rather than just waiting for the gap where I could talk about myself again, and thinking about what I was going to say while they were talking, and not really listening properly and then actually responding to what they said. I really had to learn that in recovery, and especially, being of service and supporting people who've just come in, people who are newcomers, and friends who call because they need a bit of advice, and not thinking that I know the best, that I need to tell them what to do, because if everyone did things my way, then the world would be a better place,
I think there's an interesting story as well that kind of sticks with me, which was you know, I mean, probably quite typical as a teenager, isn't it? But you know, I wanted to be famous, and I wanted, and the relationships with my peers were the most important relationships in my life, in my perception at that time, as far as it went. And the idea of being cool was just the most important thing in my life, and it was just more important than absolutely anything else. And I had to be cool and had to be part of, because that was going to fix it, right? And my dad was a loser, and he was boring, and he was, you know, he wore corduroy trousers, and he was an idiot, and I couldn't, you know. And then yet when my lifestyle caught up with me, and the drink and other substances were causing really serious mental harm to me, my dad was the one on the end of the line at 3 o'clock in the morning talking to me, trying to talk me down from being in quite a altered state, let's put it. And that kind of really, you know, strung. And what I think what kind of AA has taught me as well, there's another quick story, is, you know, I remember, you know, seeking the counsel of lads, you know, like wanting to be a laddie geezer, and you know, in a sort of rugby lad way, they tied me to a lamppost half naked and threw my pants in the tree. I can share about this stuff now with it's fine, it's all gone now. And that, what that taught me is, like, you know, if I hang around with wolves, I'm going to get bit. So, like, choose my friendships really carefully. If it's not serving me, or if they're not respecting my boundaries, I don't need to have to be friends with you, you know. And you know, I try, you know, I often, and this is how it was done for me as well, you know, in early AA, people matched my energy. So if I turned up and I was showing willing, and I was being keen, and I was turning up when I said I was going to do, and I was doing my commitment, people in AA have gone out of their way to help me. I mean, literally be above and beyond what it, but they're not going to chase me around if I'm just half-ass in, or if I'm sort of, no, chase me. No, they're not interested. They don't want, they've got to go and try and help someone else. And you know what I mean? And that's how, and that's been a really important life lesson for life in general. You know, if I'm not getting the same energy of someone, if I'm not getting, you know, if I'm having to chase them around, I just stop doing it. I'm not, this is not, you know, the right friends and the right people will be in your life for the right reasons. And I really, really believe in that. And that's that kind of inner confidence it's come from AA. If that, do you know what I mean? That inner peace of, like, it's all going to be fine. It doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah.
You know, just add to that, Rob, I'm glad you brought that up. Because also, as I change, naturally, my relationships need to change, or they're going to change. And I've had experience, you know, I think as a result, when you're, I don't know what you guys think, but like, I find myself being a bit more reflective on, I guess, like where I'm putting my energy, where I'm putting my time. And if I feel as if I'm spending my time with people that, I'm not suggesting everybody needs to be on the same page with me on everything, because that's just not realistic, and nor is that interesting, I don't think. But I do sometimes think, like, does it make sense for me to give my time to these people? But then there's also like a conflict of things like, oh yeah, but they're old, they're like really old friends, like you know, you're committed, you're loyal, you must give your time to these people. Actually, sure, okay, if loyalty is a key value of yours, then maybe. But I actually also think, like, as you evolve, like, your friendships change, and that's okay. And to let go of those kind of beliefs that you have to hold on to relationships that no longer serve you. And that could be not just because, well, they're still going for it on the drink and partying and all that stuff, but it could actually just be the outlook that they have on life. Like, you know, so I feel like that is natural. So if, you know, I feel like that might hopefully be helpful, because it's like, why am I, you know, for me, I was like, why am I feeling so disconnected to people that I used to consider my friends now? And because I've changed. It's not their fault. It's because I've changed. And I like to find people that want to, I don't know.
Like-minded.
Yeah, and want to come alongside you in that journey. I mean, I was incredibly blessed that I had a group of about 5 or 6 friends that were friends of mine before I started drinking. And so they knew the person that I was before, and they kind of they were in pain watching me go through what I was going through, but they really, really stuck by me, and they're still really, really good friends of mine now. And they've been my absolute cheerleaders the whole way through, which has been unbelievable. And I mean, there were times when I, didn't talk to them or didn't support them or whatever, but they're just people that have been incredibly loyal to me. And I feel like our relationship now is much more reciprocal. And like Rob was saying, when we show up for other people want to show up for us. Rob, you also mentioned the lad culture, which was really funny, because I, in my drinking, mostly surrounded myself with men because they drank more like I did. And there was kind of an element of, I don't know, I enjoyed the attention, and I felt like I was scared of women, because there was always, for me, there was kind of an element of competition, and I'd been bullied at school, so I just kind of assumed all women were like that. And at the beginning of my recovery, they told me men support men and women support women, and I was incredibly nervous about that. But actually being able to kind of form these bonds with other women in recovery has really, really shown me the value of female friendship, which is something that has uplifted me so much. And I mean, that's not to say that I don't have male friendships. I mean, I'm friends with both of you, but there are certain things that women have in common and men have in common that don't necessarily cross those lines. And I mean, obviously there are other people who have identify differently and all of that kind of thing, but for me, having friendships with really kind of motivated, intelligent, passionate women has been really, really amazing, and has kind of transformed the way that I see that kind of friendship. I don't know whether you had a similar thing when you came in.
Like I said, so I had two phases to my AA. So my first AA was kind of like me not really kind of getting involved in the solution that we offer, like the 12 steps, and kind of just hanging around the edges a little bit and kind of just moaning a little bit, I suppose. And then another episode where I kind of got into with some quite enthusiastic people, which initially kind of did my head in a little bit. I was like, oh God, Lord, who do they think they are? Do you know what I mean? But what they were trying to teach me was that life is for living. You only get one shot. You've probably done all your manic depression and your misery for the whole life already. You've done your whole quota already, and you're in your early 20s, mate. So maybe cheer up a bit, my friend. It's not that bad. Life's pretty good. Misery is optional, and let's go out and have some fun. And they really lived that. It was in Dorset on the south coast, and I don't know. I mean, maybe in this busy city culture we're not as good at it, but they made time. We frequent contact with each other in the bright spot of our lives. We'd go out, we'd have barbecues on the beach, we'd play beach volleyball, we'd walk up mountains together, we would go out sailing, we would go out and we would live life like it's our last day, and really and it says that it kind of promises us that we will make lifelong friends and we'll be bound together with new and wonderful ties. And that's been I've absolutely lived that. I have unshakable bonds and friendships with people because we've come out of a problem, but we've got into a common solution, and it's been great. Me and Christian walked up a few mountains, and we've done whitewater rafting, and that was not on the cards when I was drinking. It just was not. It was just misery, self-reflection, more. And what I found is that socializing is good for my mental health. No man is an island, right? And I remember saying that to an RC newcomer, and he said, well, I am an atoll. And that's just, that's just it. Like, I'm just like trying to beat the rap. I'm trying to come up with my way of working stuff, my way of thinking about stuff. And my thinking just wants me on my room on my own, drinking myself to death. So I've got to get out of my room. And that's why, this pandemic's been quite an interesting time, because it's been right. I've got to learn new ways to do that stuff. I've got to still keep maintaining that stuff. I can't wait for the pandemic to be over before I start doing unity of socializing and fellowship again, because it's so important. I've got to do stuff like this. I've got to find new ways to do it, and if AA stayed sober in the Second World War, what's my excuse? Do you know what I mean? It really is. I've just got to get on with it and find a solution to it, and that kind of spirit has served me so well in all my relationships. And I suppose that's a little bit. I mean, I can go on if you want. You have to shut me up.
Yeah, I mean, something that I get so much from you, and I mean, it's something that I feel like our friendship has really, really helped me to see, is really the importance of unity. Like, we've talked about you. We gave you a shout out a few weeks ago, I think, when we were socializing, and unity is so important to you, and connection is so important to you. And it's really, really helped me actually having you in my life, because it's just reminded me how much, not just going to meetings, you know, that on its own is not going to keep me sober, but really firstly giving back and having, say, you know, when we go for a group walk or whatever, you always invite a newcomer or two, and that's amazing because we're sharing our experience with them. And yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It really is.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's that thing, isn't it? It's like 1/3 of the AA program, and people forget about it. And whenever you sometimes get some AA stalks go, "What do you mean by that?" No, it isn't, but it is. They built it into the symbol so we wouldn't forget it. It's 1/3 of the AA program is meeting up with people and having fun. You know. Now, look, my sponsor says obviously I've got to get a life as well. You know, I can't just live my whole life in AA. It's not about that. You know, I'm also getting into my music and my kickboxing, believe it or not, which is quite funny at my age. But you know, it's all good. You know, and you know, you get to do stuff. You get to, you know, the lessons about relationships and responsibility I've learned in AA are transposable into other areas of my life, and are really important. You know, it's just how the world works. People expect you to turn up when you say you're going to turn up, and they expect you not to be hungover, and they expect you to do what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it, or let them know in good time. I learned all that here. Because I would maybe, you know, ring you a month later and say, can I have 10 quid? You know, that was it. I was just that kind of guy. And just very quickly as well, I mean, about relationships. So something people often, we started the podcast about why do we have a sponsor? And you know, and I often get that asked now, you know, you're 19 years, Robert, why do you still need a sponsor? You should be, you've got this now, my friend, you know, and you know, I mean, the example I could use about that is that I was starting to date a lady. We spoke about dating, didn't we? And you know, I don't know. I think in my heart, I suppose, my spirit, there was kind of like an inner voice that's saying, maybe this lady is not right for you. This might not be work, you know. But you know, and I checked out with my sponsor, and he said, yeah, probably doesn't sound, you know, like you are that compatible, but being an extreme example of self-will or knowing better, I decided, no, this is going to be a great relationship. I decided to move in with her for 5 years, and very difficult 5 years. And it turns out that intuition inside me, that spirit inside of me, or that thing inside of me that's saying this probably isn't the right thing for you, was correct. And no matter how much I tried to force that to happen or make it happen or try, it's going to happen, it didn't happen. And that taught me a lesson about why I need but you know, he didn't say, I'm going to sack you, or I'm going to, like, you know, I can't sponsor you anymore. He just let me find, you know, what does he say? He says, a good sponsor tells you, a great sponsor lets you find out for yourself, you know. And that's what and it's annoying because that's what he was doing. You know, he was just letting me find out that this wasn't the right thing. And okay, there we go. And you know, out of that, you know, experience is extreme value in life if I turn it to good use. And I have lots of experience about being in the wrong relationship now, which is great because I can help someone else with it. But I don't recommend it. And what I'm trying to say is maybe I should just listen to my sponsor earlier, but maybe that's just my defiance in me that doesn't want to listen. I don't know. But, you know, that's why I still need a sponsor, because I make really bad decisions sometimes.
I think we talked about intuition in the last episode, didn't we? Where it's like, so often in my drinking and stuff, I would just go against my intuition. Like, you know, this doesn't feel right. But yeah, as you say, trying to force it, trying to make it work. And that sort of part of that was like, I want to be seen in a certain way. I can't let this go because, you know, also it means I'm a failure if it doesn't work out. Or and something that I wanted to just touch on was just like, not being a people pleaser as much anymore. I think that's a really like strong, obviously I still do it from time to time, but I'm quite a bit more sort of, because I know myself more, I know like what I like, what I don't like more, and what's okay and what's not okay. And I also sort of feel, I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday, actually, guy in the fellowship, really nice bloke. We just like clicked, like we were just on the same page with everything. And we were just talking about how even in AA, you kind of have to be a little bit wary of certain people that, you know, and you know, the ones that want to be your best mate and they don't even know your name, you know, those people, you know, being a little bit like just cautious. And I think that's just something that you get through kind of just being conscious, I guess. And another thing that I wanted to mention was to do with people not liking it when you change. And this is more to do with people, I guess, outside AA. Either not liking that you've changed, or because it kind of reflects something negative about them. But yeah, I think that is just something that naturally happens when you've decided to take more of a spiritual path, or a, spiritual path, I guess. It's just like, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, and actually it's not their fault, because I was in the mindset that we've all sort of, to some degree, been brainwashed to believe that what matters, as our parents' generation were also to an extent brainwashed to believe that XYZ matters. I'm probably talking about capitalism, which is almost like a whole different topic of conversation.
Another episode about that.
Maybe, yeah. But when you go down a path, which, that's not to say that you can't have lots of money and lots of things if that's what floats your boat. But I've realised that for me, that I'm not really interested in having lots of things. I quite like an essentialism, like essential life. As long as I can pay my bills, I can see my friends, I can play my music, I can do things which are me through and through. I'm happy.
Yeah, I loved, you both mentioned intuition, and that's been something that's been a huge part of recovery for me, has been kind of re-identifying the connection with my gut, I guess, my gut feeling. And I personally believe that my higher power speaks to me through my gut, and it's clearing the space and clearing the kind of sitting in my head just thinking about myself, or trying to intellectualize and understand everything. Because before I came in, I thought, if I can just understand, then it will be fine. And actually what recovery teaches me is that it's not about intellectually understanding things, it's about taking the action and doing something about it. And that intuition, for example, when lockdown happened, I lost one of my jobs because they moved away from London, and immediately I was like, oh, I need to find a job straight away, and it meant that my initial inclination was to say yes to everything. But actually, when I really, really reflected on it and felt in my gut that a job wasn't right, because of my sobriety, I now have the power to say no when I feel like something isn't necessarily going to work for me. And that kind of links into what you were saying, Christian, about people struggling with our changing. Because I always used to say yes to everything, or I used to go out of my way to please other people, even if it didn't necessarily work for me, or I wasn't going to be able to do it properly or enough, because I'd said yes, but I didn't really have the energy or the inclination. I just said yes because I needed them to like me, not because I actually wanted to do it. So when I kind of started saying no, or saying, that's not really going to work for me, or allowing other people to behave badly constantly, and then kind of still keeping them in my life, I realized the power of trusting my gut, and also not necessarily saying yes to the things that I can't show up for, and really considering saying yes, and making sure that I'm saying it because I'm actually going to be able to show up in the right way, because I haven't, spread myself too thin trying to make everybody happy. And ultimately, what it used to be was the decision to try and make everybody happy was not because I had this really kind of kind, compassionate heart. It was just about needing everyone to like me and needing everyone to think I was great and this wonderful person. And actually, it meant that I said yes to so many things, and then half of them I didn't even show up to, And
also, saying yes, trying to please people that you don't even like is nuts. Yes. I don't even want any of what these people have. Why do I care so much about trying to be part of this kind of thing that I'm not even interested in?
Yeah.
And it goes back to school, trying to be liked by all the different cliques at school. I had the jocks had to like me, the geeks had to like me, the creative people had to like me, because I just didn't know who I was, you know, and couldn't handle not being liked and being seen to be a likable person.
And it just means we're more genuine. And we talked about this last week, you know, the more internal work that we do on ourselves with the steps, and, you know, some people get outside help with therapy and things like that, the more genuine we are, the more genuine people respond to that. Like Rob was saying earlier, we attract what we put out, and people meet us where we're at. And I mean, one example for just a bit of context is, like, I walk my dog in a local park, and I've become friends with this wonderful group of people. And my sister says to me all the time, like, how do you have so many friends? Like, you seem to just meet people left, right and center. And it's just because I'm a genuine person now, and I'm honest, and, you know, I share things with people. I can share my vulnerabilities, not obviously spilling everything to everyone, but we connect through our vulnerability. And when we're able to say, like, oh, this is something that's going on for me, or, like, you know, I'm struggling with this, or I'm struggling with that, then people are more likely to open up to us as well. And I found that even with people outside of recovery, that, you know, when we show that we're not perfect, people are then able to say, oh yeah, I'm not perfect too. Let's bond over our imperfections, you know, because if you see someone and they're giving the impression of everything is always fine and everything is great, you kind of think, well, I'm not like that. Is there something wrong with me? Or, like, we're probably not necessarily going to be able to see eye to eye because I have all of these imperfections. And then that also, like Christian, you were saying about not being able to be liked by everyone. One thing that really helped me, my sponsor says, like, okay, do you like everybody? Do you like everyone? So why does everyone have to like you? Like, you're just going to have to learn to accept that even if you're being lovely, even if you're making all the right decisions for yourself, even if you're doing esteemable things, not everyone is going to like you. And that's
empowering.
Okay.
That's empowering though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, we're gonna really go with this one. So basically, God, I don't mind sharing this. It's fine. So anyway, basically, yeah, my sponsor said you're gonna just have to get happy, content. Right? He says this is a mindset. He says we're all gonna die alone, right? So get comfortable with that and accept it and embrace it, and then that's fine. And do you know what I mean? And yeah. I mean, I've heard some people there go, "Oh, that's he's a bit of a staunch sponsor," but really
painful.
No, but what he's trying to teach you is if you've accepted that at a gut level, and that's fine, and if you've got a power greater than you, or you've got love with you anyway, you don't crave in an unhealthy, needy way relationships with people to fix and validate you, which are never going to fill you, because what you're really after is a spiritual solution. I think what he's trying to say, and that really kind of resonates with me, is I don't need other people to fill a kind of a higher power shaped hole inside my gut, is what I'm trying to say. And people pick up on that. And, you know, it talks about in our literature, either we try to be the boss man and the bully and the dominator of people, or we as adults rely on people in such a childlike and desperate and scared way that they rebel and go, I can't be around you, you know. And that's been my experience, and that's probably what a lot of my AA lessons has been, is kind of growing up a bit and becoming a bit more self-sufficient, self-reliant. It's fine, you know. It's fine to be in a relationship with yourself, and it's fine to be happy. And also, I just want to touch on this. It's quite an interesting one as well about what a sponsor isn't. I remember having a sponsee who in his step work, it came out that he played that role. He played the role of kind of desperate and kind of victim, and I need money, and he was skilled, and I knew this about him. We'd done the step work together, but he started. I'd started buying him meals, and then I would start I'd pay for him to go out clubbing and stuff like that. And I was like, hang on a minute. And then I said, hang on, look, this is not sponsorship, my friend. This is doing you disservice. This is allowing you to be insincere. This has got really unhealthy. I think we need to stop this. And as soon as I withdrew any kind of offer of finance like that, he didn't want anything to know anymore. And that for me is an example of what sponsor is not. So it's not, you're not someone's sugar daddy. Do you know what I mean? That's not sponsorship, you know. And but that doesn't mean, if someone's you know, just getting on their feet again, and you have an opportunity to offer them a bit of work or like, you know, a connection with someone, to that's fine as well. But they've got to be keeping their side of the street clean and meeting you halfway. And I've had that. I've had experiences where people have helped, give me a hand up and a help up, but they're not going to do it all for me, and they're not going to certainly be my nanny or stuff like that, I think, you know.
Yeah. I loved what you said about kind of, you know, being a whole person in your own right, and not needing someone to fill a hole, or not needing someone to complete you. And we talked about this yesterday with dating and with romantic relationships. Like, if you're looking for someone to fix you, or for someone to fill that hole in the soul that we talk about, you know, that desperate need for something external to us to make us okay, that's not healthy. Whereas if you're a whole person and you're comfortable for friends, family, whatever, to come alongside you and be kind of like, just a partner in life, rather than a fixer or a provider or whatever. You know, we can do this independently, but other people can complement us, not fix us or complete us necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, you know, I don't want a relationship with a mother figure. I want a relationship with someone we can. A partner is the good words. We share stuff. We work together for a common goal. We're like-minded. I mean, I don't want to get too kind of gaudy or religious, but, you know, the idea of there being a spiritual kind of focus in a relationship as well, you know, like an outer, so that helps with that, not needing that other person to, we don't worship that other person as a kind of a higher power or godlike person, you know, that, you know, you're both working together for a spiritual commonality, a spiritual aim, a spiritual, you know, a way out of stuff together. I don't know, you know what I mean, like a good way of, you know, I mean, I've prayed with partners, and I've meditated with partners, and that's been really great. That's been really always been a very powerful part of a relationship. Is you know, it's just got to be careful. It's not, God, please make us see my point of view. You know what I mean? Like, that's not.
Yeah, it's ultimately, you know, identifying if a relationship uplifts you. And, you know, if you leave an interaction with that person, or if someone leaves an interaction with me feeling better than they did when they came into it, then I think ultimately that's a really healthy, loving relationship. Whereas if you leave it over and over again, I mean, you know, if you've had a fight or something, obviously you're going to leave feeling a little bit worse, although I do kind of tend to try and come to resolutions these days. But if somebody leaves an interaction with me feeling worse about themselves, or I leave an interaction with someone feeling worse about myself, then ultimately it's not particularly healthy.
Well, it's do I want to be happy, or do I want to be right? You know, I have to say, in my earlier sobriety, I was still incredibly very reactive. You know, we have a saying, you know, stop. You know, I'm maybe I may be an alcoholic, but I've got to stop acting like a drunk, even when I haven't got alcohol in me, and kind of that irascible, grumpy, and annoyed. You know, I'd often find myself in earlier years saying blah, 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 all this stuff coming out of my mind, and saying this stuff, blah, 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 which I probably should have spoken to my sponsor about and got some inventory about, and you know, checked stuff out before I said stuff, and then kind of going out of myself thinking, why have I done that? You know, God, I can't believe that. So it's kind of like, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? And does this need to be said by me now? And is it kind, you know? And as I give to the world, so I will receive. So the more the kind of kindness and understanding and compassion and empathy I give out to people, the more I'll get that back. And that's what I found in my relationships. Doesn't make me a mug. Doesn't mean like I'll just like, you know, I'm not going to just, you know, sort your life out for you, but you know, but yeah, you know, how can I be of service to this person? My life always goes better when I try and do, you know, it's not my natural inclination. Like, I have to get up and I have to concentrate and ask God, you know, power greater than myself, to work to be of service all the time. Like, please, you know, and this is, I don't want to go on too much more, but you know, this is how I know I've still got a lot of spiritual work to do, is that my dad, for example, has got a disabled wife. He just turns up, he looks after her, he bathes her, he cares for her, and does all that stuff, and he does it without any seek of any glamour or any ego in it. He just turns up quietly and gets on with it, you know, and that's how I know I've still got a lot of spiritual growth, because for me that's still like, oh God, that looks really hard, you know. But that's what life is, you know. That's what long-term successful relationships are. You turn up and you be of service to each other in the relationship. You turn up, you know, you don't dominate, you don't expect someone to wait on you hand and foot, you don't expect, you know, you turn up and you be of service. And And that's what I've learned, I think, you know.
It feels like it's like knowing what your needs are as a human being and being able to communicate that to people, but also we lose ourselves. I think it was Gandhi, lose ourselves through being of service to others. Like, what can I give? Like, what can I give to the relationship? How can I contribute? And I'm, like you, Rob, work in progress for sure.
Yeah, we all are, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that note, maybe a good time to wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah. So let's end with some gratitude. Rob, what are you grateful for today?
Yeah, I am grateful for my mental health, and that with the tools I've been shown in AA, that I can positively influence someone else's mental health if they pick up those tools.
Nice. Christian?
I'm grateful for the fact that yesterday I could leave my house and go and meet people in the fellowship and play table tennis with them and feel like I've known them for like 15 years. Yeah,
That's
grateful for
amazing.
that.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Good one.
I am grateful for just people with different experiences from me, because I can learn from them, you know, and it's not always comfortable because some things I hear I don't really want to hear, but yeah, just being able to learn from people and to not always surround myself with people who are exactly like me, you know.
Lots to be grateful for.
Yeah, 100%. So that is the end of another episode. Thank you so much, Rob, for joining us, and for all the listeners. We will be back next week with a speaker. Please do like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or feedback about what you've heard today, we would love to hear from you. Send us a message on Instagram at Young and Sober Podcast, or email us at youngandsober@outlook.com. That is it. We are Young and Sober. Bye.
Bye.